every episode, Lucia Solis goes really in depth, her knowledge and her science background. She came from the wine industry and is now in coffee processing, and brought that knowledge, deep knowledge, into the world of coffee, which has already begun creating creating a vocabulary or a language that wasn't necessarily based on scientific language or the lexicon of the winemaking industry. So it's really interesting to hear like all of this kind of like breaking down the, hey, well, like, is anaerobic fermentation the proper way of like explaining what that's, and she really goes into detail, and it's really a great episode. I think that science is important to understand, and to have the leadership in helping develop a language, but at the same time, we're people and we need to communicate in 2 or 3 different languages. So sometimes we say honey processed. It's not honey. It's a descriptive way of doing it, but it works.
As part of the goal of a lot of the quality challenges throughout the coffee industry is to kind of, and I'm sure William will talk about this, where part of his responsibility is to be calibrated, not just in the calibration of flavor profiles and understanding what your senses give you off of any particular coffee, but the vocabulary is part of that calibration. One of the best descriptors I had ever heard, and I've used it a time or two since then, he described coffee. He sipped it, kind of looked up and said, it kind of starts out like an orchestra tuning and finishes like a drum set being thrown down a flight of stairs.
Love it.
There's verbiage that we all need to be calibrated on so that we all know that, but no, it's fun to play with that. So there's different needs, different situations.
Well, I want to dive real quick into the one that I've heard a lot of debate about, or a lot of questioning. In the episode, she talks about anaerobic fermentation, but the way to properly say that is microbial demucilagination.
Good job. I'm not trying that.
I don't know if I even said that right, but I will tell you that because it's so difficult to say, it might not be adopted by the coffee language vernacular of face-to-face communication, because it's a tongue twister. But in any case,
I don't know. We could get into that. Don't we like saying things like away Tenango?
Hey, you nailed it. You nailed it. You got it. See, we can all make this happen.
We like saying things like that.
And another couple things that she said in that podcast was she mentioned dry fermentation was a way scientifically that was legitimate, I guess. She's like, dry fermentation, that is a term that makes sense. So please watch the podcast, and she'll go more in detail as like what that means. Sure. And also submerged fermentation, implying some sense of like submersion under like a water or something like that. And it was going through some sort of fermentation in some fashion, way, shape, or form. Watch that, because she does a heck of a better job than I can. Let's look at you sent me some slides, and I thought it was really cool that we kind of like have 5 different steps that we just kind of want to touch on real quick to like let everybody kind of into the world of coffee processing.
And that's to treat the humper. The pickers can to have two humpers. One is for the good cherries, ripe cherries, you can see the color, but the other cherries is bad. And we don't want that cherries on the tree or in the soil, because in few months you'll have a lot of broca, and that's so bad for the plantation.
Like rotting fruit on soil brings a lot of insects to the area, a lot of diseases, and definitely like a challenging environment for that. And how often do you see harvesters in the field having 2 different baskets done, right?
Yeah, normally it's just one. I saw that in Colombia are pretty bad for broca, so he designed these 2 hampers.
That's great.
And he pays a little bit more the pickers, because it's slowly, but he's safe in other, in the yields or less broca. So that was smart and pretty easy,
What's done with that secondary hamper?
All the coffee for, it's a bad coffee you can sell.
Here you've already kind of separated it. So, if you added water to this red cherry, you'd have less floaters because you've already kind of done the work.
You can see in this picture, some cherries looks pretty good. but inside is vanished. You know, is no development cherries. So with the flooding, you can get out the cherries, and you'll get better fermentation or cleanest fermentation. You don't want to ferment all that cherries in flooding with good cherries or with good coffee in the farm. If the nutrition was pretty bad, you're going to be a lot of cherry flooding. Last year was a really bad year for Central America because the summer was pretty hard. So we have less water. So you can see a lot of floating cherries. So, but that happened for the lack water, you know.
Said was, in some cases it could be the amount of fertilization in the soil. In others, it could be another type of impact. So
the people, yeah, but the people know, you know, if the weather was bad, they know that happening because we have a we call it PECA team. It's like a education producers, more or less. Is that we have agronomic on the field, visiting farm, so they know if the producer applies the correct fertilization or the formulation correct, for example. So you know you'll have problem in that farm with the quality, with the yields, because we pay in origin for yields. You know, if you have a really clean, really healthy cherries, you have better yields.
what kind of cleaning practices, I'll slide over here, does this entail, basically? Yeah. How do you keep your farm fresh for good coffee?
Well, that point is this step is so important for us. You can see the difference between time ferment so clean, like the picture, or the machine, you know, the pulping. When you cupping that those coffees are pretty clean. It's easy to find the flavors, the profiles. But normally, when you are going to visit, you know, small producers, the ferment tank or the machine are pretty dirty. Sometimes you don't want to cup that coffees when you visit the farm. Right. Are you thinking, oh my gosh? We discovered something pretty nice in Colombia with some farms. They started to clean in more the equipment, the time fermentation, and they give more. They get more or less 2 points in cup, you know, that before. So just cleanest give you 1.5 or 2 points in cupping. So that's pretty cool.
I would say that looks like a really nice clean depulper.
I mean, our producers, we try our producers have the equipment so clean, because when we receive a lot of customer or roasters, so when they come from far away, you know, to go visit farm, and they look this, it's like, okay, I want that coffee. I want a contract with this producer because I want this.
It's going to be attractive, just like walking into a nice coffee shop. I've walked into a lot of coffee shops, Marty. You have too, where it's just a mess, and you're like, how is the coffee going to taste good out of this place? And sometimes it does. It tastes like, wow, that's really good. That's awesome. Like they got a lot of culture, you know. But if you want to avoid the risk of losing a customer, it doesn't hurt to clean up a bit every once in a while. And you know, that's why I take a shower every day.
Well, at least
you got to stay sharp.
In our world, I've found that the people that are of the mindset or the thought process to take care of the cleanliness, they're also doing things in a good manner in other areas. And William, do you find that the farmers that keep a clean, tidy farm or processing area, that they also are doing some of the other best practices?
Is the cleanness is in everything, you know, is with, for example, with relationship with the people, the workers, the pickers.
You said something about part of the reason is cup flavor profile as a part of one of the objectives of doing this fermentation? You know,
Sure. William was talking in the pre-show, and what I've learned over the years is that the fermentation process has an effect, and by experimenting with that and doing various fermentation processes, you can become in control or create, not really create, but coax out different flavor profiles. Where if you don't ferment enough, the coffee can be dead. It could be lack of flavor. If you ferment just right, you bring out the most of that out of that coffee and have flavors and be bright and alive and very complex. But also you risk over fermentation. So there is a risk factor. You can't just go crazy, or you might end up with coffee that tastes like vinegar, or some other processes, chemicals that come out in that fermentation.
You know, yeah,
Right?
if you give a short fermentation, yeah, the coffee is going to be more flat coffee or basic coffee. And then maybe 30 or 60 or 40 hours, you can find more complex, more sweetness, develop more, I don't know, red fruits or yellow fruits, depend. There is a high risk, you know, if you give maybe 17 or 18 hours, maybe the coffee is going to be ferment, and that is damage. So
yeah, and I think that brings us to the next phase, the next process of like what does drying do for coffee, basically?
It's so important. This is for example, in Colombia, many years ago, we had problems with that because the producers wanted to dry the coffee faster, because they wanted money. The procurement sample, the coffee was great. You know, it's complex. Yeah, I want the coffee. So just shipment and send me that coffee. But when the coffee arrived or landed, the coffee was aged,
past crop, and I'm like, there's no way that this could have been harvested 3 or 4 months ago. And that's exactly correct. I mean, I've heard, you know, that quicker drying times, like too fast, could collapse that quality. And what's the opposite of that? Too long of a drying process
the coffee has a lot of humidity, and it's possible to develop fungus or bacteria.
Types of, like you said, phenol.
Exactly.
Could possibly occur.
If the dry is pretty long, maybe more than 30 days. But the current time for dry is between 12 and 15 days. And yes, for that, this bed rise in thread levels is pretty cool, because, you know, in Central America, the summer is pretty heavy.
This is great. And I wanted to introduce it. Like these are raised beds, 3 different levels. What's the process here? Because traditionally it's black tarps, and then you have cement patios, and then these raised beds. So we're talking about the raised beds off the ground. Why is that important, that coffee is raised off the ground? And what benefits does that provide to coffee being dry?
Yeah, take advantage of the space. You know, you can dry more coffee in the same space. You don't more space, so that's an advantage. For dry coffee, you need just air. You know, it's no more temperature. We want just air, so it's easier to dry the coffee. Because, and the other thing is, we want totally shade in the first level. First 4 or 5 days, dry the coffee totally shade, because you have a lot of water. You know, the coffee has 50 to 50% humidity. That's a lot of water. So if you expose totally, you know, expose the sun, the temperature maybe 30 degrees. That's normal in Central America. So the parchment gets opened. The seed gets exposed the sun, and it's possible the embryo can die. For that is the problem then with the longevity or the aged coffee. If the embryo dies, forget it. You know, the coffee in 3 or 4 weeks is going to be aged, or, you know, woody or baggy. The second level, when the coffee has 25% humidity, we move the second level, and we spend another 5 days in the second level. And when the coffee has more or less 18 or 17% humidity, we put in the third level to finish to dry.
Can you achieve high quality coffee through mechanical drying?
Yeah, well, it's a challenge, yeah, of course. But I mean, the problem is the quantity appropriated, you know. But the problem with the producer is they want to dry the double volume.
Oh, like when I do my laundry, I just like stuff it full of wet clothes and it never gets done right. And I'm like, okay,
really
I don't know how to do my laundry. So you need to, or roasting coffee too. Like you can stuff your coffee with, you know, too much coffee in your roaster and you don't hit the profile. So, you know, to have someone like yourself say that if you do mechanical drying in a way that is managed well and that is to the right capacity and time, that you can achieve good coffee quality through mechanical drying.
However, I recommend that to drying machine and silos or you know, dry machine, guardiolas is it another name. Maybe when the coffee has 20% humidity.
So like a shared sort of system, right?
Yeah, because it's so important. The first 5 days, dry the coffee so slowly, because you want the parchment so closet, protect the seeds, and that happens when you dry the coffee slowly, you know.
One question: is there a really great memory in your career that's coffee related? That's a fond memory by being in the industry?
I remember I give a score 92 points, one coffee. That's my highest score give for one lot. Small farm, just 2 hectares. It's pretty small.
Wow.
But the coffee was amazing. And when I called him to tell him, hey, your coffee is great. It's so complex. It's so sweet. It's a beautiful, you know, all that stuff. And the producer was so happy, so proud. And then we sell the coffee. I don't know if we sold the coffee. I don't know if you know George Howell.
Oh yes, of course. Yes.
Everybody
so
knows
he gets,
George Howell.
I hear he roasts some pretty good coffee.
Yeah, he bought that coffee and he gives 94 points in that cup, and that was maybe 11 years ago.
Oh wow.
And they continue. George Howell continue buying that coffee in that farm, a small farm, and so that's pretty awesome. And the next year he coming to Colombia to visit that farm, and obviously I went with him and was wonderful.
Yeah, that's such an amazing and rewarding experience to have, to be a part of that transaction, to find that supply chain and to bring that reward to the ones who deserve it the most, but rarely ever get to see it.
Yeah.